Yo guys, welcome back to a brand new video. I was just about to make a video before this because I thought George just wasn't gonna respond. It had been over 37 hours since he had made that statement on Twitter saying how he was gonna stream later that day and show proof and gather evidence. And right as I was about to make the video, he started streaming. Now I want to say right off the bat that George did gather, in quotations, evidence, but that evidence becomes almost void because of how many holes are in his argument. And there is only a handful of pictures that he shows in his video. So in turn, it doesn't really make sense to me why it took him so long to make this. Aside from that, he wasn't even live streaming in of itself. He live streamed a video that he had already created and for some reason just didn't upload it on YouTube. Anyways, I'll go ahead and dive into the VOD. So George essentially starts in the beginning, talking about how they ended up getting the hotel for VidCon, and that the only two people with creator passes were Katie and her friend, where they all went to Dream's hotel room and were finally introduced to George. That is a very simplified and watered down summary, just so I can get into his VOD a little bit faster. So after George clarifies how pretty much all of this came to be, he begins to start talking about his lack of awareness when it came to her age, and I'll go ahead and show his explanation for that now.
So eventually what happened is Katie and two of her other friends came to Dream's hotel room. This was my first time actually meeting them in real life. I didn't even know who they were before meeting them. And then we essentially just were playing drinking games in the hotel room. We were just having fun, talking with each other. Nothing crazy in particular. Now, one thing Katie said retrospectively, looking back at the scenario, is that I was flirting with her throughout the night and that she was uncomfortable with this because of our age difference. At the time, she was 18 and I was 26. She actually assumed I didn't know her age because she had never said it. But then later, I had actually DM'd her on Instagram. And because of this, she says that it is confirmed that I know her age. To give some context to this scenario and to why I didn't know her age, my perspective of things is that I am with people that are over the age of 21 in a scenario where we are doing things that people that are over the age of 21 are doing, like drinking. And also the people that came from an event where they had very heavy security. This was an official VidCon after party. And with previous VidCon after parties, I even had problems getting into these events. And there was actually a picture where it was shown that they had this 21 plus wristband on one of their wrists.
Okay, so in Katie's video, she mentions that she says out loud that she's 18 years old, and he talks about that later. But this in particular, I do want to talk about. I feel like so many instances on YouTube specifically of creators getting fucked over because they didn't ask the age of somebody should at least put this idea in creators' heads that anyone you interact with that you don't know, you should verify their age. It really boils down to a simple, hey, just to make sure, how old are you? Oh, 21? Okay, here's a bottle of Everclear. And it's that simple. Like, whether innocent or guilty, I feel like the YouTubers that have been called out for fucking up with somebody's age should at least make people think, okay, this could go wrong. I don't know these people. I should verify their age. Like, examples like Pyrocynical or Natty Forsyth, James Charles, Colleen Bellinger. Although Pyro doesn't really fit in that group of those people. My point being is, unless you ask, you are fucked. Also, about that wristband picture, he doesn't even say that he saw them wearing it. He just says he scrolls back in the messages and then sees that. I'm just trying to point out how strange it is that you're having a get-together with people in a party and you have no fucking idea how old they are. Like, this argument is really stretched out too, and I can boil this down. Guys, I assume that she was 21 because security was tight, and people are already going ape shit in comment sections in his videos and in the replies of some of these videos. People are immediately saying, look guys, he showed proof. He showed proof that he knew she was 21 plus at the time, which making assumptions isn't proof. And again, as a creator, not even as a creator, as a grown-ass adult handing out alcohol to people that you've never met in person before, it's your responsibility to verify age.
Something I actually want to point out before I continue with the rest of the story is the way that she phrases some things in her story. Instead of saying that her and the rest of her friends actually wanted to come to the hotel to hang out with us, she said that one friend was invited by Dream, but she didn't want to go alone. So then they decided to go along with her because they were willing to go anywhere. I just think it's important to note already that the story is slightly different from the reality of it. Another thing that she talks about is how we insisted that she drinks more and that we insisted on playing drinking games when this isn't the case. Again, they had already been drinking at this party before they arrived to the hotel room, and they had also been the ones that were asking to play the drinking games. So instead of us insisting that we play it, they were actually the ones that were asking us. and you can see that in the screenshot here. They had actually texted multiple times, specifically wanting to play this drinking game that we had played the night before. And during this, she was laughing, smiling. She gave no indication that she was uncomfortable with me sitting this close to her. She also mentions that she was thinking about my age and that I was a lot older than her. Again, she was 18 and I was 26 at the time. And again, to clarify, I actually didn't know how old she was, despite her claiming that I did, just because it was in her bio. I also want to address a fact that she claimed that would confirm that I know her age. She said that she had answered a question about her age during a drinking game, and we were talking about sex, and that she admitted to everyone in the room that she was 18 and a virgin at the time. Now, I just don't remember this happening. I'm not saying this to just pretend like it didn't happen. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I did not hear it happen. We're not just all sitting down and not moving. It's a, it's a chaotic environment. I could have been getting a drink. I could have been talking to someone else. I just did not know that that was said.
Now, for this little topic right here about her saying her age in front of everybody, at that point, it's just his word against hers. It's possible he heard her say that and lied. It's possible that he didn't hear her say that at all. It's possible that she didn't say that and she maybe thought she said it. And funny enough, whether this statement is completely true or false and has evidence to back it up or doesn't, he's still in the wrong because he didn't verify age.
I'm just going to read the quote. She says, "Out of nowhere, I felt him slip his hand under my clothes, sitting next to me on the couch in front of everyone. He disguised it with a simple, 'Are you ticklish?' I coughed out a no, and still staring at my phone, I was overly aware of the fact that we were in front of other people. The fact that everyone else was sitting around us, watching us, including my best friend, and that his hand was inching further to places I hadn't asked it to be. Again, as I mentioned before, we had previously been cuddling on this couch for around an hour, but I did place my hand on her waist under her shirt. The way it's phrased makes it sound like it just happened out of nowhere, when in reality we had been cuddling for over an hour at this point, and it was not out of nowhere. It was also around half an hour until I started moving my hand further up, and the way it's phrased just makes it seem like it happened pretty instantly and pretty quickly. There was nothing quick about it, it was very slow, and I was very cautious about it and making sure that she was comfortable throughout the process. Me and Katie were very touchy, very cuddly, and very slowly got more intimate.
His argument starts to get a bit more fucky here. Yeah, guys, I know I was putting my hand up a drunk girl's shirt, but I know she was completely okay with it because she didn't punch me in the face. He also mentions that they were laying on the couch together for like an hour and cuddling. I feel like I need to sharpen the image here. He clarified that the first night that they met, there was nothing extraordinary going on. It was more of an introduction, and the second night they were just playing games and began cuddling. Okay, so you have two drunk people who have known each other for less than 2 nights, and you're cuddling on the couch. And you know what, so be it, you're getting closer, that's fine. I don't think anybody in their right mind would make an advance like that on someone who's intoxicated, especially in front of a group of people.
I've always been overly cautious with consent, and this is not just because I'm a creator. I've been like this since before I was a creator, and I think that's just the way I am and just the way it should be. Nothing came out of nowhere. Everything progressed very slowly throughout the night. And also, before I continue, I want to make it clear that the furthest anything ever got was under the shirt touching and cuddling. Now, obviously, people don't typically ask if everything is okay, even such as touching someone's waist under their shirt before they do it. But in this case, I was extremely slow, and she was engaging with me the entire time, laughing, cuddling with me, and even playfully fighting me for the game that we were playing.
This part kind of begins to bother me as well. Guys, I love consent. I love consent so much. I'm overly cautious. I'm more cautious than the usual. I'm exaggerating a bit, but still. I feel like if you're overly cautious about consent, you would most likely be asking anytime you want to make an advance in any sort of way, you would ask, is this okay? Are you okay with this? It's really that simple of a question. But his way of saying it is, well, I did it slowly, and I wasn't too fast about it, so that was my way of making sure she's okay with it. And that's not the way to go about it, especially with someone you just met. So this overly cautious thing about consent, I think, is kind of a load of bullshit.
She was not moving. She was not speaking. Of course, I don't believe that silence is consent. I just want to make sure that it is abundantly clear. She was visibly and physically responding well to everything that we were doing.
Listen, guys, silence is not consent. But in this case, because she smiled at me, it is. I think in a lot of cases, when people are at parties or social gatherings and they feel uncomfortable, they're not going to vividly and openly express that because they don't want to be a buzzkill. I know a lot of people that do that. I think majority of people don't want to give off that impression, so they'll put on a fake face. I even saw some people talking about this, replying to the same way that they would force a smile to try to not ruin the mood. And I can see this being reasonable with friends, taking their laughter or smile or positive attitude mood to reflect their true emotions, but with someone, again, that you've barely known for not even a whole 2 nights, it's definitely not something you should just go with. Now, as shitty as I think George's response is, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. I know people aren't gonna like to hear that, but George did show screenshots of Katie asking to play the drinking game again. I feel like as an 18-year-old who knows you are not legally able to drink, that the risks are pretty substantial, especially in the case that you can get everyone, especially yourself, arrested if you're caught. There is screenshot proof of you asking to play the drinking game. In other words, asking grown-ass adults to give you alcohol. And I know people are gonna jump my shit and assume that I'm attacking Katie now, which I'm not. I'm just trying to clarify that there is so clearly irresponsibility on both parties. Katie even said in her videos that she felt like she was being pressured to drink, and I just find that really strange, given that she had asked about it and was on board with drinking and playing those games. It honestly sounds like a massive misunderstanding on both sides, and I know people are gonna get mad at that, and I don't really give a shit. Right now, there are so many people who think one side has to be completely right, and don't get me wrong, I think George fucked up significantly worse than Katie did, but Katie's context of the situation seems very vague and also somewhat out of place.
Also, when her friends left, she got up to say goodbye to them, and she would come back to the same scenario. I also just want to point out that her best friend was here during this whole process, then afterwards did leave, and I think it is important to note that she made the choice to stay behind for many hours more. And as I mentioned before, she did get up, say goodbye to them, and came back.
This gets even more confusing because she says she felt very uncomfortable throughout that whole ordeal and couldn't breathe, and then mentions that her friend leaves, and instead of leaving with her, she decided to tell them goodbye and stayed. I'm seeing people point this out on Twitter, and everyone's saying that they're victim blaming, but I think it's a valid point to bring up. Again, people may not like that at all, but when you're telling your friend goodbye, and your best friend to be more specific, who I would assume you trust more than anybody else there, and you decide to stay behind after they leave, why would anybody assume that you're not comfortable there?
She then goes on to tell a story about the elevator and how I joked about it being broken to try get her to go in with me. So Katie actually had her own hotel room on the same floor as Dream. So she actually didn't have to take the elevator. She walked me to the elevator when she didn't have to and said goodnight to me, which was nice of her. I did joke with her about coming in the elevator by pretending that it was broken. I went into the elevator, the doors closed, and I would press the doors open button to make it open again. I did this a few times, and she didn't go along with it, which I respectfully took, obviously, and ended up just going down.
Now, with this whole elevator situation, it just sounds like 2 completely different vibes are coming off from both of them. It sounds like he was trying to coerce her to go with him to his room. She wasn't fucking with it, so he went to his room in the elevator, and then she went to her room, and the night went on. And again, he goes on to say that she was happy and smiling and having fun, which again doesn't excuse any of that. He should have asked if she was okay with any of those things in the first place. Now, I think George did do a little bit of victim blaming here, because he was saying she was happy, she was excited, etc. But then again, he did say he was sorry that he ever made or contributed to making her feel that way. So, my opinion, I think George is being genuine, but has no idea how to take accountability for his fuck-ups. I think Katie's feelings are completely valid because she saw it in an entirely different way. I don't think George had any intention of being malicious at all. I think he was being incredibly irresponsible, and for some reason just can't acknowledge that. Now, following this whole situation, Dream backed up George, and he says, based on hearing both recounts of stories, being there myself and talking to everyone that was there afterwards, George's recounting of events is much closer to what actually took place. I think people expressing that someone did not consent or to touching or cuddling because they did not verbally speak it is extremely dishonest. You can clearly consent without verbally specifically saying something, just as you can nod your head to say yes. I think the first part of this statement is absolutely retarded. Like, yes, maybe with someone that you know kind of well and you can identify that, but with someone that you just met, no, not really. I think the question is still very important. Dream continues and says, silence is not consent, but I was there, and although I did not know that any sexual touching had taken place, I can say for a matter of fact that their intentions were extremely positive throughout the night, and she had many opportunities of separation, even getting up and down off of the couch and laying back down with him after the alleged sexual assault took place, and her best friend leaving after what took place and her choosing to stay for hours. Katie was avoidant of clarifying anything to them or defending me, and was careful with how she worded things and texted me about it. It was speculated by everyone that was there that night that it was because she is good friends with with the UK group, and she didn't want to lose them as friends if she defended me or my character, or said anything positive over text. Both Katie and Ghosty expressed their interactions with me and were not representative of how the UK group talks about me. We all talked positively afterward about those nights and even talked about meeting up again. I had no impression of anyone having any negative opinions about anything at all that happened at VidCon, even after directly talking to and asking people there specifically about it. I feel terrible for Katie, and I believe she genuinely has extreme feelings about this, regardless of how they're formed. I am sorry that I had all contributed to this negative period of her life. I would hope that she knows that I had absolutely no negative intentions at all. I really thought she was a great, fun person to be around. I do not feel bad for any of the people masquerading as heroes, though, that are doing so for personal vendettas in relation to this or other accusations, including my own. So, in summary, do I think George is a terrible person? No. I don't think he had any malintent. It sounds like he unintentionally pushed boundaries in a very irresponsible way and took her positive attitude as consent, which still doesn't excuse his lack of awareness for the situation. But I feel like this should be clarified and very specifically. The both of them were very drunk, which makes this situation significantly more confusing, and anything that's he said, she said can be wildly hard to prove. I don't think that George is an abuser, and I don't think that Katie is wrong for feeling the way that she does. Goodbye.